All right, welcome to Circulation SIG Koha. It is June. Welcome. I'm John. I work for the Colorado Library Consortium. And yeah, we were just talking about hitting up the Koha conference in August. Should be a good one. Hopefully you guys can make it.
Yeah, I'm
Really
gonna.
costs like travel. It's not too much to attend.
No.
And virtual's free, so that's always an option.
Right. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't my computer's audio isn't that great, so I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Barbara and I are going, and we're presenting actually.
What's your topic?
We just started using, I guess, in the last year, the Koha POS module, and so we're going to talk about that. And I hate presenting, but Barbara's twisting my arm, so. But anyway, we've been using it, I guess, a little bit less than a year, and we've had some ups and downs, but for the most part, we've been pretty happy with it. So.
Very cool. Well, can't wait to meet you guys all in person.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I know Michael had a few cert questions. The first one was how to handle circulation, but only at a local branch. So items that can only check out at that branch.
Right. Right now, we've been using, for example, if a library in our consortium has new items, they're allowed to keep them for 30 days for just their patrons. And up until now, we've been using a lost status. So they would just set these items as a lost status, which means they couldn't have holds placed on them. But that's a really clunky way to do it. And so I've been looking for a better alternative. And I think I'm leaning towards having a special item type where in the circ rules, you could just set it so that holds can only be placed from the home library. The downside with that is then you may have to have several different item types, one for movies, one for books, and so on. So I'm just curious what other people have done with things like local history, yearbooks, and stuff like that that libraries keep for their permanently for their local patrons only.
Yeah, definitely. We use a just a local checkouts. Yeah, with no holds on it. There's also like the no circulation, so just the items that stay within the building, you know. But yeah, you can definitely lock that down to a specific branch.
We use essentially 3 item types. Special collections is what we use for things that stay at a library and they're permanently not getting shipped to other libraries. Then we have one that's called local hold book. And I think we set those for 60 days. Is the amount of time that things can stay there. And we use the automatic item modification by age. And so if somebody adds an item today and they call the item local hold book, in 60 days from the accession date, it will automatically become book. And then we have another one that does the same thing for videos.
Okay.
But that's the way we manage it. And having it happen automatically is what makes it less burdensome.
Mm-hmm.
And our setup is fairly similar. So we do new book, new visual media, new audio media, and everybody puts all their new stuff in that. And then I can set rules at the branch level to say whether they share their new stuff or not. So like if everybody is sharing their new stuff, they have access to the people that are sharing their new stuff. But if they don't, then they're not allowed to borrow from libraries that do share. It's a big convoluted setup, but it works. And then for local item, yeah, I call it the sharks and the fishes. That's where the sharks come from. For local items, I do have item types set up specifically that are like thing. So we use thing for library of things. So I have thing, and then I have thing like local only, and equipment local only. So I've got some local only ones to manage stuff that doesn't circ on the courier basically. And then for the really local history stuff, most of the time libraries don't want to circulate that outside the library anyways. So we just use our doesn't circulate item type for all of that stuff, and that prevents holds entirely.
So you would just use reference or whatever is
Yeah,
the
they're
equivalent.
basically like a reference book. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that
I'm-
auto, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Michael.
I was gonna say the auto item modification, that was where we were running into issues because you have to have, you can't have, you have, the system has to know which item type it becomes after it switches. And so you can't just have one, you have to have multiple for the different formats.
I think that's like at branch too, so you have to have one for each location. An automated setup. Is that what you guys need?
No, you don't
No,
have
it's just
to.
one.
You can limit it by branch, but so for ours, our new book goes into book, and our new audio media goes into audio.
just all
So,
of
like
them?
globally. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's ours too.
I think our different branches have slightly different rules, so there's a big list of those.
Yeah,
I
I do
was-
have some called like I've got one. I won't say it. But one of my libraries is really bad about taking things out of in processing, so I've automated that on their behalf without them knowing, so that they don't miss holds, because that's been happening.
So while I'm over on YouTube looking for the Sharks and Fishes conference presentation, I can't find it. We've got so much stuff on YouTube now.
It
It's
was
kind of
the Coeur
insane.
d'Alene conference.
Yeah, it's an old one.
Been a while since I talked about it, but I do have a presentation on that setup, and it largely hasn't changed. There have been some differences, but you
Out of
can
all-
see how we
Out of
laid
all the
out there.
conferences, that's kind of the worst one to have a video from because those videos didn't turn out very well. We hadn't figured out the online conference thing yet.
So does that mean you need to redo that presentation at a future conference? That's what I'm hearing.
Maybe, yeah. I'm all booked up this year though, maybe next year.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Found it. Link coming in the chat. And it doesn't look, it actually looks like there's some video in your conference video. I know the one that I did at the Coeur d'Alene conference is just a black screen in my voice for like half an hour.
Got there, InReach plugin.
Say that again.
Does anyone use the InReach plugin to do ILL transfers between different ILSs? Nothing. That's like one of the main ones. I just heard we're switching to a different one, OpenRS, and I'm not sure what that's gonna do.
So how does it work? How does it work right now?
So yeah, there's like 3 or 4 different ILSs it's communicating with a resource sharing broker that they have to use on their ILSs, and then Koha has a plugin that makes it communicate with us, but there's a lot of bugs in that. It's like
I
with
know
cross
that what was that is doing a presentation at Koha about improvements to ILL. We've talked
Yep.
about it here in Kansas. We use Share It though, so we can't use the InReach plugin.
That's
but we've
is that
talked
a
about
different plugin?
there's not a plugin for Share It. They would have to be developed. So we're not using Koha ILL at all, but we've talked about Koha ILL some. I think that would be beneficial if we could get it working, but it's just not where it needs to be. But Lizette mentioned that what the InReach plugin is doing is sort of what we want. So like there's the concepts and ideas are there. It's just executing it to make it work how we think it should work.
When
Setup.
Jason and I had a conference with Lizette, And she, after talking with us, she said she just needed to make the Koha to Koha ILL work like the InReach ILL works in Koha. She said, and she thought that wouldn't be as difficult as it sounds because all the API stuff is already there for working with InReach. So
Consortiums across the country are starting to use it, so starting to get a lot of more money into it. Move faster.
I wanted to ask Jason, we're gonna be migrating to Share It, and I wondered how it was going and if it's a good system. So we're a little bit nervous about it.
You don't want my opinions on Share It.
Yeah, I do actually.
We we don't have it set up with INSIP or anything. Like
Okay.
we're just using it as a separate external software, and compared to Koha, it is so clunky. It just requires a lot of babysitting to do anything, and which is why I've been pushing us towards this Koha to Koha ILL idea. Like if we could streamline it so it's like Koha, when we're sharing stuff between the consortia in Kansas, at least it would cut out a lot of staff time. But I think I've heard rumblings that you guys are getting into working, so
Yeah.
that may be less painful for you guys than it is for us. It's just something that, as a state, we've never used it, as far as I know.
right. The process for if Jason wanted to ILL a book from our office, he would have to leave Koha, go to Share It, find the item, place the request, and then somebody at our library once a day goes to Share It and sees if there are any requests for our materials that need to be handled, and then they check it out in Koha, ship it, check it, do the processing and Share It, and then ship it off to the other library, and then they have to do the processing and Share It, and then do the processing in Koha if the patron wants to track it. So it's like having a second ILL system. And many of my libraries, the way that they handle it, there are a couple of libraries that only get 1 or 2 Share It requests a year, so they just keep track all of the data in a notebook because it's easier.
Right.
So I bet if you asked just about anybody in Kansas if they were big fans of Share It, you probably would get a similar response to what Jason and I are giving, if not something less positive.
So we are going to be using INSIP, so I'm hoping that automates it a little more. Do you allow patrons to go into Share It and do their own requests?
That's
It's
kind
an
of on a
option.
library. Yeah, it's a library
Yeah.
by library thing. Some of my libraries allow patrons to place their own Share It requests, but most of them don't because then they would have to use Share It more often, probably.
None of
Well-
our libraries do either.
Yeah, I'm the concept of having a patron be able to do that, I like. But when I look at the Share It interface, it just is like, if I'm sort of confused by it, then I think patrons, are going to be like, well, which do I choose? And there's a lack of cover images, and there's like 10, 20 records per title, and so it's less than I thought it was gonna be. But
My
Just
favorite
when I-
part of Share It right now is like when you search for something, you have to wait for it to think about looking for more results, and you have to push a button that says update the results so you can see all the results before you get to see all the results, and that's a feature.
oh,
Terrific.
interesting. We're set to go live next
Friday.
next Friday. I'll be on vacation, but
Yes, conveniently.
it wasn't planned.
Exciting though, making the jump. How many libraries are you adding on? Switching over?
Was that for us?
Yeah. How many
just-
libraries?
Yeah, we're a single site library, so
Oh.
we just only have to worry about us.
Well, that'll be easier.
But how many other libraries are using Share It? Is it a statewide ILL system that you're
Yeah,
signing on to?
we were on Navigator, and that's been sunsetted, so the state had to go out and come up with a new ILL system, and this is what they chose, so this is what we get.
For us, our processes team was pretty excited about patrons going into it on their own. But I think we've spoiled our patrons already so much as for material requests, that just covers ILL or purchase. So, because our mentality is the patrons don't care where they get it from, they just want the thing. So we had it set up where didn't find what you're looking for, put in a request, and then that request would go to to our tech services. And the librarian there would decide if we're going to ILL it or buy it. And once we have trained patrons on how easy that is for them, it'll just be our power users who are like, I know I'm asking for a really obscure thing, so I'm just going to go to Share It, so. And yeah, we're probably not going to market, hey, you can go do this yourself, because I think at this point it'll just confuse them.
When do you go live?
I was told and I forgot. I think I don't know. Yeah. She told me and I forgot. Because circulation, our process won't change very much at all. Yeah.
So regarding ILO, if you have a separate one, right now we've got, if libraries want to keep track of their stuff in Koha, when it's sent off on Share It, they check it out to an ILL account. And we've got multiple libraries that have a separate ILL account for each library on Share It. And so we've got some libraries that have several hundred patron accounts that are interlibrary loan accounts, and we're trying to get rid of those. The problem is, if they have one ILL account, number one, if they check it out to that account, it doesn't tell them where it's going. And the second is, if they've got a lot of stuff checked out on there, it starts to really bog it down. And so I don't know if there's any way to add a special field that says where it's going, but I don't know that there's a good solution to that, but I'm curious if anyone else does something differently.
We just make the libraries cross-reference it and share it if they need to know where they send it. But largely, we don't have a lot of, our little libraries have one ILL account and they're not doing a lot. The bigger libraries, some of them are still maintaining separate accounts for each place they send it, but I don't have a good solution for that.
That's exactly the way we've got it going too. The bigger libraries like Leavenworth and Ottawa will have a separate account for each library. And then the smaller libraries that use Koha for their checking out their ILL stuff will usually just have one ILL account. And then, like I said, there are others that they don't even track it in Koha really.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how ours is too. Yeah, like each district has a Koha ILL account, and then once that gets the status changes on their end, like in their broker, it shows it the transit information and stuff. But we have had an issue getting like the courier code or something to know exactly where items are going. Sometimes they have to like look at the barcode on the book, and then we have part of our website has a courier code lookup, and then they can check that if it's not automatically telling you. So it's kind of a pain sometimes.
ILL is to libraries what printers are to IT people, I think.
Yeah, we were having an issue with grouping on like our sharing website where it's looking at the 001 field and it's hoping for OCLC, but we do not use that. So like all of our records are getting separated like onto its own record by itself rather than all grouping up. So that is a pain. But we're switching soon, so there was no reason to like do a mass project to try to clean those up or anything.
It's a feature.
Yeah, exactly. It's a positive. Other circulation stuff we got out there.
All right, I have a question. It's somewhat for everyone, but also those with consortiums. Does anyone use the OPAC renewal allowed system preference so that patrons can set if they want to automatically renew?
This is usually just based on like item type, if it automatically renews or not.
Because we're trying to figure out like if that system preference would govern a local circulation rule. Because we have it set on, but we're starting to get some libraries don't want that feature. And so I'm like, okay, how do I set it where these libraries who do want the patrons to be able to automatically renew the books and change that setting, they can, but then the libraries that don't want to use that, they can set their circulation rules to don't automatically renew. Does anyone know anything about that whole world?
We do have that turned on for ours, but we also use Aspen Discovery, so I'm not quite sure how those interact. We do have automatic renewal for most of our libraries turned on now. And in that case, I believe we have it set so that if it's renewing automatically, it can't be manually renewed. So that could be one way to do it, is if it's renewing automatically, then the patron then it can't be manually renewed itself, which would block the patrons from doing it. But I don't know how you would do it if you wanted only the staff to be able to manually renew, because that system preference is on or off.
Okay, yeah. Our other thing was notifications, because patrons can choose which notifications they use. And if it's automatically, the fear is if it's automatically auto renewing, they won't get an overdue notice or a notice saying this book is being auto renewed or getting ready to be auto renewed. And so we have some circulation rules that are like 6 months, 3 or 6 months. And so if you renew that automatically for 3 times, you're looking at a year and a half. No one's notified you in a year and a half. You've forgotten all about it. So it's like they need a notification saying, hey, either this has been renewed, something's getting to their email saying, hey, something's been done with this book. Make sure you still have it.
We
Yeah,
have ours set to auto renew and they're getting a notification. So they get a notification that your books are about to be due. And then they'll get another notification that these books were renewed, but you still have these 2 books that are due. And those 2 books are probably due because there's a hold on the item or something.
Okay.
So it's a clear email that I think communicates well to them. These 3 you get for another 3 weeks. These 2 you have to bring back.
What system preference do you have set to make that work?
It's the notices auto renewal digest. It's under notices.
I think the problem is that you have to opt each individual patron into those notices, right? It's not like
That
a
is true. Our
global
patrons don't get a choice. They are
Okay.
forced to auto renew.
Yeah. We have it set that the patrons can opt out of auto renewal if they choose to. So if they want to renew, so we have some patrons who want to renew their books on their own schedule for some reason. So we have auto renewal turned on, but we have the ability for patrons to opt out if they should so choose.
So default, everyone's auto renewing.
Yep.
And that's probably pretty rare, right?
Yeah, it's only like 80 patrons out of 110,000.
And that wouldn't mess with the notices.
No.
Do you know if there's a way that they have to like, they can change how they get notices in most of them, but that automatic renewal notice you will always receive? And I'm not even sure, I'm still learning how the notices work. Like that's you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I know nothing, 10 mean I know everything. I'm like at a 2 when it comes to
I think you would have
notices.
to like lock it up with jQuery or something. I don't know that there's a way to, like, you would have to, you could auto check it whenever you add or edit a patron, and then on the OPAC, make it so they can't uncheck that as one of their messaging preferences. But I can't think of a way to do that with native settings.
And there's no way to batch update notice preferences, which is one of my biggest beefs.
You'd have to do that from the command line. Like
Yeah.
you could run a report of everybody that needs it and then check that box on the back end, but you can't do it with the batch modify tool or anything.
You can use to do that if all the patrons are on their own patron list, you can auto update everybody at the same time using this plugin. Let me see what it was called. Batch patron permissions modifier. Use it all the
Does
time
that-
for the prisons because you know that all the different staff have different access points. So nice and easy. But every time you make a change to a patron or you have to update or add another patron, you have to update the plugin again.
So that affects permissions as well as notice settings.
Yeah, I want because it's based off of like a template. So I feel like if the template had the notices set, it might be able to
I
automatically.
I don't think the batch permissions modifier affects the notice
Oh,
permissions.
that's just under patron permissions and not notices.
Right.
I did
Done.
find a plugin from Inlibro called the Koha plugin messaging preferences wizard, but it's in French, so I don't know what it actually does.
So close. Just need to translate it.
Now you know how they feel when they see all this Koha documentation that's in English. Though a lot of them speak one language, more than one language, so they know English.
There's some English about it. I don't know what it does. I just found that. I haven't read it.
Okay.
But it might be exactly what you need because it does say it lets you change messaging preferences for users.
Had an issue with our ticketing system where it was flagging all of our responses as spam, so nobody was getting any answers. Some big change happened recently to email, like backend stuff. I don't even know.
Yeah, and some of these settings, we're not sure if like something happened with an update and we've got all these new settings, or we've just been overlooking them and something just came up like with the right set of circumstances that made us go, oh, okay, this could be a problem. Let's look at this, see what it's attached to. So thank you very much. Very helpful.
Good morning. This is Jenice from Department of Archives and History. I have a question, but it may be from the system administration end, but it's dealing with circulation. We just migrated to Bywater hosting us. And we did the single sign-on set up. And so when the person working the central desk, the circulation desk, goes to retrieve the the holes to pull to print the call slip or the whole slip. They're already logged in to get to that point. But then when they click on holes to pull, ask them to log in again. And I didn't know if that was from our SSO settings or is that something within Koha?
Click on to make it have to sign in again.
Say it again.
So you log in once, and then what did you click to for it to make you have to sign in again?
Well, if with the person working the circulation desk, if a patron places a hold, we have it set up where the person working the circulation desk has to click on circulation, click on holds to pull, and they'll see the list of things that have been placed on hold. So when they're already logged in to get to circulation, but then when they click on holds to pull to see the list, it asks them to log in again.
Weird.
When it asks them to log in again, does it say they don't have permission to access that feature?
No, it takes us back to the original login where we have to click on the link to log in originally when you're logging in for the first time.
Yeah, we don't use SSO. I don't have any libraries that use anything other than just logging in with a card number and a password. So I don't know what's going on there, but it's definitely something I would reach out to Ask Bywater about if they
I've submitted a ticket, but I was just wondering if anybody was experiencing something like that.
I can't help you at all, but we do use single sign-on, and that doesn't happen.
Okay. Are you using Microsoft?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a feeling it's a setting that we have something on our end within our department. But thank you.
Yeah, Jenice, this is Michelle Reid at Bates, and we also just moved to single sign-on, and we don't have that problem either.
Okay, thank you.
I will say a problem we do have, which I haven't bothered to put a ticket in yet, which I should, is some of us can single sign on and some of us can't. And I'm one of the ones who can't, so I'm just like, and then I go back to logging in the old way. But all of my new folks, it's working.
One thing that they stress for us is the email address that you're using at where work, it has to be within the your patron profile.
Okay, yeah. And I've just been too lazy to do anything about it, so.
This is like half circulation related and half system administration related, but I've been working on the controls for dealing with the super wide table on the circulation rules page. So if anybody's interested in that, I can pull up my screen and show you what I've been working on.
Make it fit all in one window.
Well, you can never make it fit all in one window, really, because there's just so much. But Click has been using something similar to what I wrote for the Coeur d'Alene conference. And you can see a blank screen and hear me talk about that if you go to the koha-US webpage and do that. But you know, the original one, I had it so that if you clicked on the header, it would shrink down that column. And then Lucas came up with this thing where if you click on he turned it all into buttons at the top of the page. And my newest addition is to have a show all button. And these are the defaults I want. And there's circulation and fees and requests. You can just get one set of rules, like all the rules that deal with requests. If I click on this button, they're all there and they do all fit in one page. Circulation still doesn't fit in one page, but it's a lot a lot narrower, and I've got this button over here to remove the left navigation. So
Yeah, we use all those tabs, but I like that top column with the yeah, those general.
the defaults, circulation
Yeah,
rules
super
only,
nice. I'd look
fees
into that.
only, request rules, and suspensions, which we would never use, but somebody out there might want to use the suspension stuff. So
George,
yeah.
is there a way to make it so that it saves your last setting that you're displaying? Because that's something we've run into on ours, is we used some of the jQuery you shared in your Thursday video.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to modify a bunch of different things at once, it goes
doesn't,
back.
yeah.
Okay.
That's why, for me, the way I've got this set up is, let me share again. If I move this to a window that's 2 screens wide, whenever I reload, it will automatically reload this. Whenever you reload and you've got 2 screens wide, it will automatically get rid of that left-hand column and spread everything out across both pages. So that's one of the reasons I have 3 screens on my desk, is just for the circulation rules. Because if you show all of the circulation rules, it literally does take up just slightly more than 2 screens, because there are just so many of them. But that's one of the things that I've been able to perfect, is that if you have it set wider than 1 screen, it will automatically drop that left-hand column and embiggen the whole thing. But to get it to remember which ones you've checked in the past would require some work with like session storage or cookies, and that's out of my wheelhouse. So
Yeah, and that could get messy, I'm sure.
yeah.
I have kind of a random question, if we're ready to move on to a different.
Oh, one quick question, George. Does that stuff break with a point release, or is it pretty solid?
It shouldn't anymore, because that's the issue with the old code that I had, is that each time there's a release and any new columns were added, you had to go back and refigure which columns, because it was just done with the indexing. And then Lucas, for Bob's sake, Lucas went in and came up with a way to base it on the names of the column headers rather than the which position in the column order you were in. And so that's what I've done here, is I've added that, but then I've also added those buttons for grouping the rules.
I totally forgot I went down a rabbit hole on this, and I can't show you anything, but I will show you at the web dev meeting maybe, using data tables responsive to make this table responsive. I think it would be possible to set this up where it's like only showing you on screen what your important settings, like checkout limits, that sort of thing. And then when you click edit, it pops up a modal with all the options that you can change. I think that would make this so much more stomachable. But then I got distracted, and then my test server got upgraded, so I don't know where all that code went. But I'm gonna try and revive it for the web dev meeting to talk about at least.
Okay, now I realize I had 2 questions. For those of you that have a virtual server, how do you, Bywater's asking us how we want our setup now. How do we want that? Like, how do y'all update that into your virtual servers? We're like, I don't know, like, can you mail it to it? Can you send us a link? What are we asking for? Am I even asking for it correctly right now?
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, cool. Moving on then.
When you say virtual server, you mean like a test server?
Yeah. So we're having our IT department give us a virtual server. And know that my staff member is the person who knows the computer side of this, if you will. I'm the big picture person. She's like, Molly, I need a test server. And I was like, okay, IT, she needs a test server. And they're like, okay, here's a virtual server. And then I said, Bywater, we have a server. And they're like, yeah, we can get you your stuff. How do you want it? I'm like, cool. Hilda, how do we want it? And Hilda's like, I don't know.
Oh, so
So
you
does
just
that
need a
now
dump
does
of your
it kind of make sense?
database that she can
Yeah.
upload into that test system.
So what's an answer? Is there a specific way you want the data to be delivered? Like, what are our options?
When we had a,
Dropbox.
oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. Go ahead.
When we were on-prem, we had it a virtual server, and we just provided. We provided a VPN for Bywater to log in. They did the first setup for us. So we provided them a login and they did it for us the first time.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I will now continue to poke people until the end of that sentence. Okay, awesome. Thank you all very much. My next one is, and I think we're doing it the right way, but just in case there might be a better way, we check out hotspots and laptops. We have some people who abuse those, break those, never return them. So after we've given them a few chances, we're like, okay, you're not allowed to check these out anymore, but it's just that item. So John Doe, he's not allowed to check out laptops anymore, but he's still welcome to all of our other items. Right now, all I'm doing is on John Doe's account writing, John Doe is not allowed to check out any more laptops. I'm just hoping staff reads that. And then when they're checking out to him. But I mean, and we already have those items set up to where folks can't self-check them out anyway, because they have to sign this whole form, blah, blah, blah. But am I doing it the best way, or is there any way to block per item per patron?
I can't think of a way to block
Okay.
per item per patron.
Okay.
The only way I can think of to do that would be to create a separate patron category and then restrict what that patron category has access to.
Oh, gotcha. Like if you moved from adult to laptop abuser.
To adult evil, yeah, or
Yes.
whatever you call it.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I would be
Yeah.
really interested in doing that as well.
Yeah.
That would really make my life so much easier.
Oh, so you have some of those as well?
Yeah, well, we share the same patrons, so
Yeah, facts, true.
when they get rejected in our library, they go to your library.
Okay,
Yeah, we have Chromebooks that we started with 20 and now I've got like 4 left.
Exactly, yeah.
They just don't come back. So yeah, I hate those people. But yeah, that would be something I would really be into.
Restricted patron type, but then you have to do a lot of circ rules to one for each item you're blocking them from.
Maybe this is really out there, but could you create a custom patron attribute? And then if you set it for yes, restricted, have jQuery that shows up when you get onto their circ page that has a different color or a message that says not allowed to check out just below the circ box. I don't know if that would be even possible. I don't know much about how that works, but
It would be possible, but it would still require staff being able to intervene and say, oh yeah, this person isn't allowed to do that.
yeah.
So it would not be that hard at all. Even to, you could use a jQuery function to allow HTML in the patron messages that appear when you open a patron page, and then put all kinds of crazy HTML in there to like sound an alert and, change the color and do all those kinds of things. And I've still had library staff that would just say, I wonder why it's doing that. Here you go. Here's your laptop. So it would still require, staff, that's the biggest issue here is really, you're talking about a problem, but is it a problem that's worth reinventing the whole system for, as opposed to just trying to get staff to, better trained to know what to do and to slow down enough to pay attention to what they're doing. So, and that's really hard. And you can do all kinds of crazy things to make staff try to pay attention to the screen. When I was at Latah County Library, my boss read an article about how somebody was doing some experiments to see whether or not disabling the beeper on the actual barcode scanner the theory is that if you disable that beeper, and so you don't get the barcode scanner doesn't make that beep noise when you scan an item, because the beep noise just means that an item has been scanned. It doesn't mean that the system has picked up the right barcode number, or that the check-in has completed, or that anything has happened properly in the computer. It just means I scanned something. And so she read an article that said if you disable that, it forces staff to look at the screen because they don't hear that beep, so they don't get an audio connection immediately. And so one morning before, she read this to me, and then the next morning she and I went around and we scanned the barcodes to turn off the beeps on all the barcode scanners in one of our libraries. And it was like we had stuck a dagger in the back of every employee. They hated it. It's like, how are we going to live without being able to hear that beeping noise? And it made the library so much more pleasant, because all day long at that library, it would just be beep, 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 beep. And you could hear it no matter where you were in the library. You could hear the beeping at the circulation desk. And so one of my employees is standing there checking in books in the morning the next day, explaining to me why this is a bad idea, because she doesn't, because it's hurting her ability to do her job. And as she's standing there going like this, not paying attention, she, had one book that didn't scan right. And then the next 20 that she scanned, as she's complaining to me about this, all failed to check in at all. And she was telling me how she was a good employee and that the beep was important and that she never made mistakes anyway. And then she turned around and I said, look at what you're doing right now. It's really, really difficult to train people to just slow down and do their work and pay attention. And that's what we're trying to create, a system that's foolproof, but it's impossible to do that because there's always some bigger fool out there who's going to find a way to make all your work invalid. And so that's what you've got to deal with is, at what point does trying to automate this become more work than is worthwhile. So that went on a little long, so sorry about that.
Bring the beeps back on over there.
What was that?
Did you turn the beeps back on?
No, after about 2 weeks, everybody got used to it, and they made as many mistakes as they did before, but that library was so much more pleasant without the beeping constantly, because there was no room for self-check in that library. And so there were 3 barcode scanners, and we were checking out about 60 items an hour and checking in about 60 to 100 items an hour, and just getting rid of all of that beeping made the library so much more pleasant. And so whenever I would order like about 4 or 5 barcode scanners a year for the 7 branches in that system as replacements, and as soon as the boxes came in with those new scanners, I would just go through all of them and disable the beeping. And within about 2 or 3 years, every scanner in the system was beepless, and everybody hated it when they got their new barcode scanner and it didn't beep anymore. But after about 2 weeks, everybody was fine with it, and their work went on, and the library was just a slightly quieter place. So.
Yeah, we went the route of the 3 patron types to combat that situation. So we have regular patron types that cannot check out anything without signing that indemnity waiver. Once they sign the waiver, they become a tool patron, so they can check out. We have garden tools and we have maker tools and DIY. So those patrons are, because they also have to be a resident of the county. So we're verifying their mailing address as well. So then they become a tool patron. But if they abuse the system, we have a restricted patron type that blocks and limits the number of checkouts across the board. Like they're only allowed 2 items out at a time. So it's like really restricted. But that's the only way we've come up with it. But I like the idea of being able to restrict one specific item for a patron. I think that's a great idea.
How do your patrons feel when somebody says, "Oh, you're a tool"?
Yeah.
I was making that same joke in my head. What a tool.
You're a tool. A tool resident patron. Yes. Because it has to be Arlington County, so
Did
if you're
they
in
ever,
a,
Oh.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do they, once they've been a restricted use patron, do they ever get to work themselves out of the doghouse, or are they there forever?
I don't know. It's newly implemented.
Oh, okay.
So we just implemented it probably like 5 months ago, and there are only, I think, 5 patrons in that category, but they were like severe offenders. So, but I don't know. I just moved those patrons and created the rules. So I guess I'll move them out when they tell me they're out of restricted jail, I guess. That's a good question. I should ask them.
If their fees or something. Good. We got minutes left. Any final thoughts? Cool. I think we're gonna call it there, guys. Good stuff.
Thank you all very much for your help.
Thank you.
And come back next month, July 11th.
Bye.
All right, sweet guys. Thanks for coming. See you later.